Sure. Here's a detailed and interesting explanation of part 1 of your story in simple English, expanded to around 2,500 words without headings. And keeping it engaging, James and Lisa had been dreaming of a peaceful, happy life together. After years of moving from city to city, living in busy apartments and noisy places, they wanted something different. They wanted a home where they could finally settle down, raise a family, and feel safe. So when they found a beautiful house in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, it felt like a dream come true. The streets were clean and calm, the trees were tall and green, and the houses were all well kept. Neighbors waved at each other from porches, kids played outside, and everything looked perfect. It was the kind of place where you could imagine spending many years, growing old and making memories. Lisa especially loved the peaceful feeling of the neighborhood. She was the kind of person who liked calm and order. After years in the military, she appreciated structure and rules because they gave life a kind of safety and purpose. James, on the other hand, was more easygoing and liked the friendly vibe. Together, they thought this neighborhood was perfect for their next chapter, but almost immediately after moving in, James started noticing small things that didn't quite fit the picture of a normal, friendly community. It was like a hidden layer beneath the calm surface, something tense and controlled. At first, it was little things. A handwritten note left on their mailbox warning them about violations they hadn't even heard of. Another time, he saw a black SUV slowly driving down the street, moving so carefully it looked like it was watching the houses. Cameras had been installed on many porches and street corners. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where people just left their doors open or trusted everyone. Instead, it was as if someone was watching every move they made. Lisa, though, seemed different. She didn't talk much about the strange behavior. She kept her eyes sharp and her mind alert, but she never showed fear or worry. James thought maybe she was just being cautious because it was a new place. He didn't realize the full story behind her calm. Lisa was not an ordinary woman. Before this, she had been part of one of the most elite military units in the world, the Delta Force. This wasn't just a job. It was a secret life filled with danger, training, and missions that very few people even knew about. Lisa was still technically active in the military, working on highly classified assignments. She had learned to keep her past hidden, to blend in, and to never reveal too much. The HOA, or Homeowners Association, was supposed to be just a group of neighbors making sure the community looked nice and ran smoothly. But this HOA was different. They acted like they had their own police force, patrolling the streets, enforcing strict rules, making sure everyone followed their demands. The HOA leaders didn't just send letters or friendly reminders. They were aggressive, almost militarized. They had uniforms, radios, and even carried weapons at times. They believed they were the ultimate authority in the neighborhood. It's more powerful than the police or the law. James began to realize the HOA was not just about keeping the grass trimmed and the trash bins hidden. It was about control. The HOA wanted to control how people dressed, what kind of cars they drove, and even how they talked. Neighbors who tried to speak up or disagree were quickly shut down or warned. The HOA had a reputation for being harsh and unforgiving. One afternoon, James and Lisa were in their backyard when a man driving a dark SUV stopped nearby. He was wearing a uniform that looked official, but James didn't recognize it. The man stared at their property with a cold, serious look before driving away slowly. Lisa noticed it too. She didn't say much, but her expression was serious. That night, Lisa told James she wanted to check their home security cameras and review the footage. She said it was just a precaution. James could see she was prepared for something more. As days passed, more strange things happened. The HOA started sending letters accusing them of breaking rules they didn't know existed, they were told. To remove a small decorative flag, trim their bushes in a specific way, and even asked to repaint their front door a different color. At first, James thought it was just petty. But then he heard from other neighbors that some families had been fined thousands of dollars or forced to sell their homes because of similar violations. Now, the HOA was not joking. Lisa began talking about the neighborhood like it was a battlefield. She warned James to be careful, to always watch their backs, and to never trust the HOA's so-called security team. James was confused. How could a neighborhood have so much tension? He wanted to believe Lisa was just overreacting, but deep down he knew something was wrong. One evening, they attended an HOA meeting. It was held in a small community center packed with residents. The room was filled with people who looked worried and angry. The HOA leader stood at the front, speaking with a voice of authority, explained new rules about parking noise and security cameras. But their tone was not friendly. It was commanding. When a resident tried to ask a question, the leaders cut him off sharply. The meeting felt less like a community discussion and more like a military briefing. Lisa sat quietly, her eyes scanning the room, watching every person carefully. James wished he could understand what she was thinking. After the meeting, a neighbor pulled James aside and whispered a warning. Be careful with the HOA. They don't just enforce rules, they intimidate people. Some have even been threatened or followed around. They think they're above the law. That night, James lay awake, feeling uneasy. He looked over at Lisa, who was already asleep. Peaceful on the surface, but undoubtedly aware of the invisible threats lurking in their new home. He realized that their quiet neighborhood had a dark side. Something dangerous was hiding beneath the calm streets and manicured lawns. And Lisa, with her secret past and military skills, was the only one truly ready to face it. James didn't yet know how deep this control would go, or how the HOA's police force would one day turn against them in the most shocking way. But from that moment, he understood that moving into this neighborhood was not just about buying a house, it was stepping into a hidden war zone where the rules were enforced by people who believed they had the right to act like soldiers. Lisa's calm was not weakness. It was strength born from years of training, from surviving impossible situations, and from always being prepared for the worst. James was about to learn that behind her quiet smile was a warrior, someone who had faced danger many times over, and was ready to protect their home and family at any cost. The perfect neighborhood illusion was cracking, and the real battle was just beginning. If you want, you can continue with other parts or rewrite this in a mix of Urdu and English. Just let me know. When a neighborhood watch turns into a dangerous threat, only a hidden warrior can stop the chaos without anyone knowing her true identity. Things slowly started changing for James after a few weeks of living in that fancy, peaceful-looking neighborhood. On the outside, everything was still the same. Clean lawns, people smiling, children playing with bikes, and expensive cars parked perfectly. James felt something strange in the air. The tension wasn't loud or open, but it was everywhere, like a pressure building up under the surface. It began with little things, the kind of things most people would ignore. But James couldn't anymore. One morning, he walked out to take the trash and saw their neighbor's garage door spray-painted with the words "Rule Breaker." It was gone by noon. Someone had cleaned it up fast. Nobody spoke about it. James asked the neighbor, "Mr. Holton, what happened?" The man just smiled tightly and said, "Just kids, I guess." But his eyes looked scared, not annoyed. Lisa saw it too. She didn't say anything, but James noticed how her hands tensed up when she looked at the garage. Lisa wasn't the type to ignore danger signs. Another day, James parked their car slightly, across the sidewalk only by a few inches. He was in a rush to grab something inside. He returned in 5 minutes and found a large red sticker on the windshield. Violation, obstruction of public access. Second warning will result in HOA action. He was confused. It was the first time. Who gave the warning then? He looked around, trying to see who might be watching. That white SUV, the one labeled HOA security, was parked at the end of the street again. Rick was inside it. He didn't even look away, just stared straight at James like it was all normal. James waved, a bit sarcastically. Rick gave a half smile and drove away slowly. James mentioned it to Lisa. She listened quietly. Then she asked, "Did you argue?" James said, "No. Why would I?" Lisa said nothing more. But that night she checked all 4 of their outdoor security cameras and even installed 2 more near the backyard. James was starting to feel like their house was under surveillance by both sides. One Saturday, the tension came closer. James was trimming the bushes when he heard loud voices from across the street. A teenager about 16 was arguing. with one of the HOA patrol guys. The boy had earbuds in and was skating on the sidewalk. The HOA guy shouted, "Sidewalk's not for skating. Get off now or I'll call the cops." The boy tried to explain, "I wasn't bothering anyone, man." That's when Rick showed up. Again in his white SUV. He jumped out, grabbed the boy by the collar and said, "You're trespassing, punk. Your parents signed the rules. You follow them." James was shocked. He walked over and said, "Hey man, calm down. He's just a kid." Rick turned slowly, his grip still on the boy's hoodie, and said, "Stay out of it. He's breaking HOA code." James replied, "This is a sidewalk, not a prison. You can't just grab people." Rick let the boy go, but looked James straight in the eyes and said, "You don't want to get involved in things you don't understand." That night, James told Lisa everything. She just nodded and said, "That was Rick testing you." James didn't get it. "Testing me for what?" Lisa leaned forward, lowered her voice, and said, "He wants to see how far he can push you. That's what people like him do. They poke first, then they try to own you." James asked, "How do you know?" Lisa looked him in the eye and said, "Because I've seen his type before, in combat zones, in black markets. People who are nobodies but given a little power, they think they're gods." James laughed nervously. "You're exaggerating." "This is just a neighborhood, not Iraq." Lisa didn't laugh. "You'd be surprised how quickly paradise can become a battlefield." The next few days were worse. Rick now passed their house more often, sometimes stopping for long minutes, pretending to be on the phone. One day, James found a different SUV parked just outside. It didn't have any HOA signs, but inside was a man with a laptop and a camera, lens pointed at their garage. When James walked toward it, the car sped off. He told Lisa, expecting her to get worried. Instead, she said calmly, "Next time, don't walk toward it. Note the license plate and come inside." James was beginning to feel small in his own home. He started staying inside more. Lisa was now jogging during bright daylight only and never went out alone at night. Every time she went out, James noticed the way she checked every corner before. Stepping out, her body language changed. She didn't look like a quiet suburban wife. Anymore, she moved like someone who expected danger at any moment. Things took a turn when James received a letter personally delivered, not by mail. The envelope was black, with just HOA private notice written on it. Inside was a photo, a grainy image of Lisa, jogging, taken from a distance. A red circle was drawn around her hand, which was holding what looked like a car key, below. The photo and typed words, "Observe the rules. We observe you." James was stunned. He ran to Lisa and showed her. She held the photo in her hand for a long minute. Then she went into the bedroom, came out with a locked box, and took out a small black phone, not her regular one. She made one call. She didn't speak much, just gave a name, an address, and said, "Level 3 monitoring. Activate blacklight." James sat frozen. Lisa had layers he'd never seen before. After ending the call, she finally looked at James and said, "They've crossed the line." James was angry. "You've known all this and didn't tell me?" Lisa sighed. "You didn't need to know. Until now. But I need you to understand something. This isn't about garbage bins or jogging. These people are trying to control an entire street like it's a private state. They don't know who they're messing with." James still didn't fully understand, but why us? "We didn't even do anything," Lisa explained. "Control. Freaks don't need reasons. They just need a target. And we didn't bow down. That's enough to be seen as a threat." A few nights later, things escalated again. James was in the garage, fixing a shelf. He suddenly felt someone behind him. Turning around quickly, he saw Rick, standing just at the edge of their property line, holding a flashlight and camera. "Late night work, huh?" Rick said. "Just making sure nobody's violating the safety code," James snapped. "Get off my property." Rick laughed. "Just observing, neighbor. It's my duty." James stepped forward, but Lisa appeared. Out of nowhere, she didn't raise her voice, but her tone was ice cold. "Step 1 foot closer, and I will legally end this interaction with force." Rick froze. For a second, his face looked unsure. Then he backed away and said, "You'll regret this," Lisa replied. "So will you." He left. James looked at Lisa. "What do you mean legally end this with force? Are you even allowed to say stuff like that?" Lisa gave a faint smile. James, I never left active duty. It was the first time she admitted it. And now James finally realized Lisa wasn't just ex-military. She was still part of something deeper, more serious. The kind of thing where people didn't retire. They just went dark. James lay awake that night. Everything made sense now. Why Lisa was calm during all those threats. Why she had backup phones, secret contacts, and trained instincts. But it also scared him, not because of Lisa, but because the people harassing them had no idea who they were messing with. He remembered Rick's face when Lisa spoke to him that night. That brief flicker of fear. Maybe for the first time, Rick felt what real power looked like, and this was just the beginning. The sky was cloudy that evening, soft orange light fading behind tall trees as James sat on the porch sipping his coffee. Everything seemed calm, but only on the surface. There had been no new HOA notes or threats for a few days. Rick's white SUV hadn't passed by either. Almost felt like the neighborhood had gone silent. But Lisa knew better. She could feel the silence wasn't peace. It was the calm before the storm. She had seen it many times during operations in hostile zones. When enemies disappear, it usually means they're planning something. She didn't say that to James, though. He was already under enough pressure. He was trying hard to act normal, but she could see it in his eyes. He was tense, tired, and afraid. That evening, Lisa decided to go for a run. It was something she hadn't done in a while because of the surveillance and threats, but she needed. To clear her mind, she dressed in dark joggers, a hoodie, and slipped on her wireless earbuds. Before she left, she told James, only going around the block, "I'll be back in 20." James nodded, distracted with something on his laptop, and said, "Be safe." Lisa just smiled. "I always am." She started jogging slowly, following her usual path around the inner part of the neighborhood. She kept her senses open, her pace steady. She had taken this route many times before, but tonight something felt different. At the far end of the street near the tennis courts, there were fewer streetlights. It was a little darker. Lisa didn't mind. Darkness was her comfort zone. About 5 minutes into the run, she noticed a car behind her. It wasn't speeding, but it was moving too slow for normal traffic. She glanced back once and recognized Ettrick's white SUV. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't panic. Instead, she kept her pace steady, just slightly faster. She didn't want to alert him that she had seen him. She moved forward calmly, planning her next steps in her mind. Rick's car slowly came closer. Then it stopped. Lisa heard the door open. She paused, turned, and removed one earbud. Rick stood there, flashlight in one hand, something metallic shining on his belt. He spoke with fake authority. "Ma'am, we've had reports of someone suspicious in this area. I'm going to need to check your ID." Lisa looked straight at him. "Suspicious? I live 3 blocks down." Rick took a step closer. "Can't take chances. There have been complaints." Lisa didn't move. "By who?" Rick's voice hardened. "Don't question me, just comply." Lisa could now see it clearly. There was a weapon holstered on his side, his hand hovering too close. Her brain instantly calculated distances, speed, and escape routes. She had seen these types before, people who were not trained, not stable, but had enough power to be dangerous. And Rick, in that moment, wasn't thinking like a neighbor. He was thinking like someone preparing to use force. She slowly took one step back and said, "Step away, Rick." He reached for his belt and pulled out the gun. That moment was the risk. Last second, he had the upper hand. In under 2 seconds, Lisa exploded into motion. She twisted sideways, closed the gap between them, knocked the weapon from his hand, and in the same fluid move, kicked his leg, forcing him down. Rick tried to resist, but he was no match. Lisa grabbed his wrist, twisted it sharply, and flipped him face down on the pavement. She didn't even break a sweat. Rick screamed, "You're crazy. You're assaulting HOA security." Lisa didn't respond to his shouting. She pressed her knee into his back, took out her phone, and dialed 911. With calm precision, her voice was steady as she spoke. "This is an emergency. I've disarmed an armed man posing as security. Location is Hillside Tennis Court. He pulled a weapon on me." She ended the call and remained kneeling until sirens echoed in the distance. Rick kept yelling, "I'll sue you. You're going to regret this." Lisa leaned close and whispered in his ear, "You pulled a weapon on a federal operative, you idiot. You're going to regret this." By the time the police arrived, she had already moved the weapon out of reach, hands raised, calm as ever. Officers shouted instructions. Lisa complied without protest. She even offered to be handcuffed while they sorted the situation. The officers collected Rick, who was still yelling, now claiming he was defending the neighborhood. The police didn't look convinced. Just then, James arrived. He had received a call from an unknown number and rushed over, confused and scared. When he saw Lisa standing by the police car, her hands behind her back, his heart dropped. Over asking, "What happened? Are you okay?" Lisa nodded. "I'm fine, but your buddy Rick made a big mistake tonight." James saw Rick sitting in the back of the police car, face twisted in pain and anger. He looked at Lisa, this calm, sharp, fearless woman, and something inside him changed. He had always known she was different. But tonight, he saw what she truly was, trained, deadly, and unshakable. At the police station, everything was reviewed. Rick tried to lie, said Lisa attacked him for no reason. But the officers had already seen the tennis court security camera footage. Everything was recorded. Rick pulling a weapon, threatening Lisa, and her flawless, disarming technique. One officer even commented quietly to another, "She moved like military." Lisa remained calm through the questioning. She only gave basic answers, no more than necessary. When asked about her background, she simply said, "I have federal clearance. My agency will handle this." The moment those words were spoken, the tone in the room shifted. The lead officer made a call, then came back and nodded. Lisa was released immediately. Rick, on the other hand, was charged with multiple violations, brandishing a weapon without cause, unlawful impersonation of authority, and attempted assault. James and Lisa walked out together, the night air cold and quiet. James finally asked the question that had been sitting on his chest. "You're still active, aren't you?" Lisa didn't look surprised. She simply said, "Yes." James stopped walking. "All this time? Why didn't you tell me?" Lisa replied, "Because you didn't need to carry that weight. You didn't need to look over your shoulder for things you couldn't see. But now you've seen enough." James took a deep breath. "And Rick? What happens now?" Lisa gave a dry smile. "Rick's just the surface. There's more going on here. But he made the mistake of thinking this was his playground. He didn't realize the rules change when you pull a gun on someone like me." Back in the neighborhood, the news spread fast. Some residents supported Rick, still believing his lies. But many were shocked, especially when they heard he had pulled a gun on a neighbor for jogging. Whispers ran through streets like wildfire. "Did you hear? She's some kind of secret agent. She took him down in seconds. There's camera footage." The HOA board tried to stay quiet, but the damage was done. James sat on the couch. That night, looking at Lisa as she quietly typed something on a secure laptop he had never seen before, he asked, "So what now?" Lisa didn't stop typing. "Now we clean up the mess and prepare." So once people like Rick get scared, they stop thinking, and that makes them unpredictable. James nodded slowly, realizing that his quiet life had changed forever. He wasn't just living in a fancy neighborhood anymore. He was living on a battlefield, and his wife, she was the only soldier ready for war. The police station was cold and noisy, with people talking in low voices and officers moving in and out of rooms. Lisa sat quietly in the waiting area, her posture calm but alert. James stood nearby, watching her closely, still trying to process everything he had just seen. He had spent years married to Lisa, but this was a new side of her. The strong, silent protector was now a woman with secrets deeper than he had. Imagine the officers called Lisa into a private room for questioning. They wanted to hear her side of the story about the incident with Rick, the man from the HOA who pulled a gun on her. Lisa answered their questions clearly and without hesitation. She explained that Rick had acted aggressively, without cause, and that she had only defended herself. The police officers exchanged glances as she spoke. They had seen the body cam footage from their officers and the neighborhood security cameras, and it all supported Lisa's account. James sat outside, thinking about everything. He wondered why Rick had become so bold, so careless. Maybe he had thought Lisa was just an ordinary woman, someone easy to intimidate. He knew now that Rick had made a huge mistake. After Lisa's questioning, the officers informed them that Rick would face serious charges, including brandishing a weapon and unlawful detention. It was rare for someone like Rick, who held himself up as a neighborhood enforcer, to be held accountable. Many residents had been afraid of him for months. Now the truth was coming out. When Lisa and James left the station, they faced a crowd of reporters and neighbors. Cameras flashed and microphones were thrust forward. The story was spreading fast. A woman, wrongly threatened by an HOA security officer, had disarmed him in seconds. Lisa kept her cool, refusing to reveal too much. She answered questions carefully, hinting only at her military background. That night, in the safety of their home, James asked Lisa to tell him everything. She hesitated, but then began to explain her past. Lisa had been part of an elite unit, the Delta Force. She wasn't just ex-military. She was still active in special operations. Her work required secrecy and extreme skill. She had kept it hidden. To protect James and to live a normal life, at least on the surface, James was amazed. He'd always known Lisa was special, but this was beyond anything he imagined. He realized how lucky he was to have someone so capable by his side. The HOA board tried to downplay the incident. They claimed Rick had acted in self-defense and that Lisa was the aggressive one. But the evidence told a different story. The police stood firmly with Lisa. The HOA faced legal action, with complaints about their aggressive security tactics. And illegal surveillance? James and Lisa knew they couldn't stay in that neighborhood any longer. The tension was too high, and they both felt watched. They began planning to move quietly, selling their home without drawing attention. Before they left, Lisa made sure to contact her military handlers. She needed to report the incident and get support. They reminded her that her work was never truly done. This event had exposed her, and there could be consequences. James supported her fully. He understood now that Lisa's world was far more complex than he had realized. Together, they prepared to face whatever came next. As they packed their belongings, neighbors whispered and stared. Some were scared, others angry, but most understood that Lisa was not someone to be underestimated. The story of that night remained with James forever, the night when the quiet wife became a warrior, the night when a small neighborhood's dark secret was revealed, and the night when they both learned that some battles happen right at home. After the dramatic police incident and the revelations about Lisa's secret military life, the days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions, actions, and consequences. James and Lisa found themselves thrust into a world they never expected, a world where their quiet suburban life had been shattered. They had to face the reality of justice, threats, and new beginnings. The moment the news of the confrontation at the tennis courts went public, their neighborhood was buzzing. Local news stations picked up the story quickly. Headlines read things like, Hugh, security officer pulls gun on woman disarmed by ex-military wife and neighborhood drama unveils dark secrets. Suddenly, James and Lisa were the center of attention. Some neighbors supported them, quietly relieved that someone finally stood up to the aggressive HOA tactics. Others whispered, fearful or angry, sticking to their beliefs that Rick had only been trying to keep the peace. The HOA board members tried hard to control the damage. They issued statements saying Rick's actions were justified, that he had been protecting the neighborhood, but the proof was against them. The police had clear footage showing Rick's illegal behavior, and witnesses backed Lisa's version of events. The HOA was now facing lawsuits from multiple residents who had suffered under their harsh rules and aggressive enforcers. James and Lisa knew their lives had changed forever. The once peaceful neighborhood had turned hostile, not just because of Rick, but because the HOA culture was deeply flawed. They realized they couldn't stay there any longer. It was safer and smarter to leave quietly before things escalated further. They started the process of selling their home, Lisa even. With all her training, found it difficult to trust anyone fully. They kept their move low-key to avoid any unnecessary attention. The couple also worked with lawyers and security consultants to make sure they were protected from any HOA retaliation. Meanwhile, Lisa's military contacts became active. She reported the incident not just as a civilian, but as an active Delta Force operative. Her commanders made it clear that while her job was secret, her safety and that of her family came first. They offered support, advice, and sometimes quietly intervened to ensure the HOA or others didn't pose ongoing threats. James, who had been mostly unaware of Lisa's full background until recently, started to learn about the world she belonged to. It was a world of covert operations, hidden dangers, and constant vigilance. It was hard for him to imagine, but he admired her strength, her discipline, and her calm under pressure. At home, their relationship grew stronger. They shared more openly than ever before. James became Lisa's biggest supporter and protector. He even began documenting their story, writing down events to ensure their truth would be told accurately. And with respect to Lisa's privacy and work, Lisa also made it clear to James that her work was never over. Being part of Delta Force meant living with secrecy, danger, and sometimes loneliness. But it also meant having skills and resources that most people couldn't imagine. She reassured him that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The neighborhood eventually settled into a quieter place, but the HOA's reputation was permanently damaged. Some members resigned or were removed. New rules were introduced, stricter oversight was enforced, and residents demanded transparency and respect. James and Lisa's story became a quiet legend in the area. Neighbors who once feared Rick or the HOA enforcers now looked at Lisa differently. Some even asked James if they could meet her, hoping to learn from her calm strength and resilience. As for Lisa, she returned to active duty with her unit, often leaving for missions that kept her away for weeks. James supported her from home, managing their life quietly but proudly. The experience had changed them both, made them stronger, closer, and more prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. Through all of it, one lesson was clear. Power and control, when misused, always come with consequences. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one you should never underestimate.